The time is 4:06. This is the City of Durango City Council special meeting on October 30th, 2025. Good afternoon, everyone. I have called this special meeting to provide our community with a clear and factual account of our police department's involvement in the events that took place at Bodo Park on October 27th and 28th. This meeting also serves as an opportunity for our residents to express their concerns in a respectful and constructive environment. To help us achieve these goals, we will begin with a presentation from our police chief, who will outline the police department's involvement in the events at Bodo Park. Following that, we will hear statements from the representatives of our federal delegation and from Lapata County. After these presentations, the City Council will have an equal opportunity to ask questions of the police chief regarding information shared. All righty, can we have the indigenous land reading? Oh, should we do roll call?
Certainly.
Sorry.
Councilor Coso,
Here.
Councilor Beal,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Woodruff,
Here.
Mayor Yazzie,
Here.
and Councilor Gonzalez.
This is a call to honor and respect Indigenous sovereignty and self-determination. As residents and visitors of Durango, we are called upon to educate ourselves about the history and cultural heritage of the land we inhabit. The city of Durango is situated on the ancestral homelands and territories of the Nuchu, Ute, Jicarilla Apache, Pueblos of New Mexico, Hopi-Sinom, Hopi, and Dene Navajo nations. The original stewards of this land were forcibly removed and exposed to countless atrocities by the United States government, including repeatedly broken treaties, forced assimilation, the tragic legacy of Indian boarding schools, and the loss of ancestral homelands. We recognize lasting generational trauma exists within Native communities today. We affirm the continuing importance of ancestral sites to descendant communities as integral to the living cultural landscape. This acknowledgement only becomes meaningful when combined with accountable relationships and informed actions. May this serve as a step toward inclusion and reconciliation.
Next item on the agenda, Mayor, is presentations. Presentation by the Durango Police Department's involvement in the events of October 27th and 28th, 2025 at Bodo Park.
Hello, Mayor, Pro Tem Mayor, Council. My name is Bryce Current. I'm the Chief of Police here in Durango, Colorado. I'm grateful for all of you making the time within a day's notice to be here, and also the community. It's nice to see everybody from the community, and we can all know that this is a significant value of the community by the attendance here today, especially on the short notice. So I want to speak directly and sincerely about the events that occurred on Tuesday involving a protest that later turned to a riot and the presence of federal immigration agents in our city. First and foremost, my heart goes out to the children and the family that have been affected by this situation. So I'm going to first start with a chronology of the events that are subject to change as we receive more information. So at 9:16 a.m., I got a call from the superintendent of Durango Schools, Dr. Karen Chesser. So Dr. Chesser notified me of 2 school kids that were detained by ICE. I now have information at that point that the children were detained at 7:30 a.m. So at 9:18, I verified that an ICE agent and an individual and 2 kids were detained. At 9:51 a.m., I called the local ICE agent who had the father, Fernando Jaramillo Solano, age 55, and his 2 children, detained in the Durango ICE facility. I told the agent that I had the ability and asked if the police department could facilitate the transfer of the children to their mother. And the agent said no, and it was not possible. So throughout the day, the agent called me about a growing crowd outside the ICE facility. I again asked for the facilitation and release of the children to their mother. He indicated they could not do that. So the next call I received was from the fire department advising that business trucks, fire, and EMS could not get up the road on Turner Lane and next to the fire station because cars were double parked. So it was illegal to park on both sides of the road. We agreed to allow them to park on one side of the road where it was still illegal, but to allow parking, but not the other side, so EMS vehicles could get through. So we spoke to the protesters and they voluntarily moved their cars. At 3:18 p.m., the agents asked if anything could be done by the police because the protesters were on their property and on the street. And again, I asked him what his plan was. So at 4:30 p.m., the agents called again, saying a young man was kicking the fence and throwing rocks against the glass door. We did respond to that and we ticketed that individual. And at the same time, a counter protester dangerously sped through the crowd and he was chased down and ticketed also for reckless driving. At 7:30 p.m. Monday night, I finally received a call from a Denver ICE supervisor who apologized for not calling sooner. I asked what her plan was, and she indicated ICE agents would leave the Durango facility at 1 a.m. Again, I asked if we could just facilitate the release of the children to the mother, and the supervisor advised that it was too late for that.
Please, let's have a little bit of respect for the presentations.
So my team and I were there all night, and ICE did not leave at 1 a.m. I finally got a hold of someone at 3 a.m. and they indicated they would leave the facility at 8 a.m. Tuesday morning. At approximately 9 p.m., I called the local state police. That was Monday night, and advised them of the situation. I asked what their role was, if any, because the kids are being transported across the state. I asked them to pass the information up their chain of command to the governor's office and the attorney general, and they agreed. They sent one officer at midnight to help ensure public safety, and he monitored from a distance. At 6 a.m., we responded to a dispatch call for service where there was an altercation with ICE agents and protesters. We arrived, took a report, ensured medics were there and that there were no major injuries, and we left the area, and I have more on that incident here in a minute. Next, DPD worked on vehicles and double parking to ensure EMS and fire access. We told the protesters to move their cars, but they didn't move right away, so we started writing tickets and the vehicles started moving. So DPD monitored the situation from the fire station nearby. Our plan was to observe, not escalate, and if needed, be there as a backup role if the agencies were overwhelmed. We were assisted by Colorado State Patrol in that oversight. At approximately 10 a.m., we learned ICE agents were staging at different places within the city and protesters were videoing them. Again, I called the ICE supervisor and asked if we could facilitate the release of the children, and State Patrol Major and I could go in there and get the kids and release them to their mother, and they said no. So dispatch reported that one of the children had been beaten. This was never confirmed. We ordered food for the kids, and I contacted the ICE supervisor to request a welfare check and permission to deliver the food. She instructed me to cut the chains off the gates first. I said I would work on that and suggested entering through the man gate instead because the chains didn't restrict us, but she declined. After the incident, that information was found to be invalid. However, we still weren't allowed access for the welfare check. Our deputy chief and I spoke with protesters, asking them to take the chains off the gates and to let them know it was illegal and blocking the entrances as well. And they did not remove the chains. At approximately 11:45, ICE and their partners engaged with protesters. State police supported in a defensive posture. We would estimate approximately 100 protesters, and could be more or less. Maybe 20 blocking the road on the initial response, possibly 20 blocking the entrance, sitting down, and everybody was linked in a human chain. Behind the groups, blocking access were several others holding signs and protesting. Behind that group and dispersed through the cloud, there were possibly 10 agitators throwing full plastic water bottles and milk jugs at the agents and State Patrol. And some were engaging agents and officers physically. Other participants were trying to assist, and those were trying to assist those that were exposed to the agents by pouring water and milk. So after ICE left the scene, we planned with fire to assist them and provide medical attention to the people affected by irritants. When we exited the fire station, 10 or so people converged on us, and we realized our presence was escalating the situation, so we backed out back inside the fire department to de-escalate. At this point, we continued to gather information, take reports, collect videos, and speak with state and federal partners, representatives, senators, city leaders, community members. We received a request from the public about previous police interactions with Jaramillo Solano. In our local database, he has no criminal history, and that we could find for him or his children. So I have a statement that I want to read. I fully support the First Amendment. In part, it states the right of people to peacefully assemble and petition the government for redress and grievances. I want to stress peacefully assemble. The freedom to raise our voices, especially in moments of uncertainty, is a cornerstone of our democracy, and a value I hold deeply as your chief of police. We've recently had 2 protests in Durango with a combined attendance of 5,500 people. And I'm proud to say that the organizers of our community showed exactly what Durango stands for. They were passionate, they were peaceful, they made their voices heard. It was the same leaders that told protesters on Tuesday not to chain up the fences and not to sit in the driveways and not to break the law. Martin Luther King, it is wrong to use immoral means to attain moral ends. And as a police department in a city, our legitimacy depends on not only what we achieve, but how we achieve it. Most importantly, how we achieve it. The event Monday was not a peaceful protest. It was an unlawful protest that turned into a riot.
Please, let's show respect and let the presenters present. Let's continue. Please hold your tempers.
Yeah, and I'd love to finish and give everybody their opportunity as well towards the end. So, a protest is a peaceful assembly that involves individuals gathering to express views, dissent, or advocacy without engaging in riotous conduct. The key difference is the nature of the conduct. Reports and concerns have been raised regarding the conduct of the agents on scene, and the encounters included use of force directed towards peaceful demonstrators. Any act of violence, intimidation, or unnecessary force against lawful exercise of people's rights is unacceptable and does not reflect the standard of safety and dignity that the people of Durango deserve. So municipal police chiefs cannot lawfully interfere with federal officers who are acting within the scope of their local authority. Chiefs cannot order municipal officers to obstruct or arrest federal agents performing lawful duties or create or enforce local ordinances that nullify or contradict federal law. So federal law prevails over state and local law when they conflict. Any action by a police chief to protect residents against federal officers performing and I know I'm using the word legitimate, duties could constitute obstruction of justice or interference with federal operations, exposing the chief and the municipality to civil and criminal liability. However, We do have other channels and can uphold the constitutional rights, but only through lawful channels such as complaint procedures, judicial review, and liaison processes, not physical interference. There are situations where local authorities may decline to assist federal agencies. The federal government cannot commandeer local officials, enforce federal law. However, this principle means non-cooperation, not active opposition. And I will tell you, every phone call, I was trying to be, I was asked to be commandeered, essentially. So the question remains, are they in lawful discharge of their duties? To ensure the transparency and accountability, the Durango Police Department has requested an independent investigation by both the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and the Federal Bureau of Investigation regarding the incident, the entire incident. We believe that a neutral review is essential to maintaining community trust, ensuring every aspect of what occurred is fully examined. We also request independent investigation by the FBI of the entire incident. So laws were broken and some of those actions were deliberate. It doesn't matter who you are, police officer, public official, or citizen. If you break the law, there will be an investigation and accountability. When DPD learned that children were being detained, I immediately and repeatedly worked to facilitate their safe return to family members. Later, I requested to personally check on their welfare. Regardless of the circumstances, that remains the top priority for the department. While we recognize the emotions are high, we are disappointed by the behaviors and display by agents and several protesters alike. Such actions from either side distract from the important message of peaceful advocacy and make our shared goal of safety harder to achieve. We continue to support and protect the right to protest, but we ask it to be done peacefully, respectfully, and safely. So the Durango Police Department does not enforce federal civil immigration law. Under the Colorado House Bill 19-1124, local law enforcement is restricted from assisting in civil immigration and enforcement actions unless there's a criminal matter supported by a lawful warrant. We remain committed to those legal boundaries and to the trust of every resident who calls Durango home, regardless of their immigration status. So our role as an agency was focused solely on ensuring the safety of everyone present, protest participants, bystanders, and officers alike. We will continue to review all aspects of the incident and remain transparent in our findings. So local citizens can continue to use lawful democratic channels to contact U.S. senators and representatives, continue to vote and petition and advocate at the federal level. They can engage locally through protest and council meetings. They can use the courts, file lawsuits, and challenge federal actions on constitutional or civil rights grounds. I had a conversation with Senator Bennett yesterday and just read an article that he sent out as well, where he's working on all of this. Citizens and local law enforcement officers cannot lawfully obstruct ICE or federal officers. Opposition must be through legal, political, and civic channels, not interference. So the practical and ethical duty of the police chief. So to protect residents' rights within constitutional and statutory limits, to maintain order and safety, even during controversial federal actions. Educate the public honestly about the legal boundaries to avoid false expectations. So to those who felt fear and uncertainty, your safety matters. Your rights matter, your humanity matters, and we're committed to continuing our outreach, listening more, and strengthening the relationships that we make with the Durango community built on care and accountability. We can and we will learn from this moment. Durango is strongest when we stand together and protect one another and uphold the dignity of every person. I mean, even here in all this disagreement, we're still all standing together, regardless if we all agree. The Durango Police Department has been given a lot of questions, and I kind of wanted to just walk through some of those questions really quick and provide some answers. So why was ICE in Durango? So ICE and Homeland Security investigations are federal agencies and they're operating under federal jurisdiction. The Durango Police Department does not initiate, plan, or control ICE operations. When federal agents are present in Durango, we generally learn about it from the community. For instance, in this, the first person I heard was the superintendent. So our role is limited to communicating with local leaders, community members, organizations, outreach groups, and we reached out to the ICE supervisor to gain a better understanding of what was going on. So did Durango Police assist ICE during this operation? Durango does not collaborate with ICE. Under Colorado House Bill Law 19-1124, local law enforcement may not participate in civil immigration enforcement actions. DPD officers were on scene prior to the protest to protect everyone's safety, not to assist or support immigration in the enforcement. So what does Colorado law say about local police working with ICE? So it prohibits information, sharing personal information solely for immigration purposes. Local agencies can only cooperate when there's a criminal warrant signed by a judge, and it's pretty clear. And it goes on to talk about we can't help in the transport, and it's pretty specific in that as well, and what that means. So why didn't Durango PD stop ICE from acting? I get this question a lot in the community. Why can't I go up and check them for warrants and other things? And there's certain things we can do. We've identified them the first time, but we can't identify them multiple times if we know who they are. We can't obstruct their operation. So local police do not have any authority to direct or control federal agencies. DPD's responsibility is to ensure that any activity occurring within city limits, federal or otherwise, does not jeopardize public safety. Our officers monitor and document incidents to ensure safety of all parties and provide transparency when concerns arise. A lot of those investigations are taking place right now. Matter of fact, I just got an email from Colorado Bureau of Investigation. They accepted the case that we filed on the 6 o'clock incident where someone's thrown down the hill, and almost everybody's seen that video. And so and I've also been informed by federal agencies that they may parallel that investigation as well. So like I said, we're in the process of taking those reports forward, and we'll be monitoring if the case of Francie, who was thrown down the hill prior to the protest with the DA's office. I've been talking to Sean Murray, and he's going to be overseeing it as well. And so this is the fifth question. So does DPD condone the use of force against peaceful protesters? Absolutely not. We don't condone violence and intimidation in all of its forms, especially against individuals exercising their constitutional rights and assembling peacefully. If anyone believes unlawful force was used, we encourage you to provide us with the video and the report, and we're taking reports. We took reports all day today. And the difference is in Colorado law, we are very careful not to use chemical agents on passive resistance. Some agencies do permit chemical agents against passive and active resistance in limited circumstances to overcome refusal to obey lawful orders. But that deployment still must meet constitutional limits, and the courts review whether it's reasonable. And the courts look at the totality of the circumstances and everything from the very start to the very finish. The courts and the recent injunctions have barred federal agents from deploying chemical agents against journalists, legal observers, peaceful protesters who pose no threat, showing that such can be unlawful in practice. If you have video surveillance, please share it with us. The facts the facts will have to be looked at by the proper authorities to determine what the threat was. So what's Durango PD doing to protect the immigrant and marginalized
Somebody's
communities?
complaining that they're not getting any interpretation.
You guys good, Tom? On the
Yeah, you're
interpretation?
good. You're good, Bryce. They accidentally had
Okay,
their
all right,
microphone.
no, that's good. So we're committed to serving every member in the community with fairness and with dignity, and that includes outreach efforts, multi-generational information, bias, and cultural awareness training for officers, and partnerships with the community organizations that advocate for immigrant and refugee populations. We work with the immigrant populations to build trust so they'll call us when they're in danger and when they're in need of a report. So why was state police called? State Patrol. So the State Patrol was called to identify their role and relay the information of what was going on up to the governor and the attorney general. It's nice to hear the attorney general's legislative intent on these types of laws. The law that defines these types of interactions are defined by the state. We were looking for direction and additional resources because you never know the complexities of situations, especially emotional situations in large masses of people and public safety. Overall, I can't speak for the State Patrol or ICE. We're an independent agency that works for the city of Durango. However, we can make referrals to the proper authorities and conduct investigations. So does the Durango Police Department share personal information with ICE? And there's a lot of stuff I can explain here. I'm just going to say no. How can citizens report the concerns about ICE or federal actions in town? Residents can report concerns to Durango PD if local laws or safety are affected. If it involves federal conduct, they can contact ICE office or professional responsibility or the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General. And Durango PD will document and forward any credible safety concerns that impact our residents, as we've done with Colorado Bureau of Investigation and also the FBI. So how does Durango PD balance free speech with maintaining order during a protest? I think I've covered that sufficiently already. Why didn't Durango PD release more information after the incident? When multiple agencies are involved, information must be verified, ensured accuracy and transparency. Our priority is to provide facts, not speculation. I'm just going to tell you, being here on Thursday night with a full council, I think we're moving right along, but we're going to continue to gather those facts, and some of those facts might change, but we're going to traffic in that facts, not speculation. What should citizens do if they witness law enforcement misconduct? They can file a complaint directly through Durango Police Department. And if it was a Durango officer, they can file a complaint through our professional standards process. They could contact the city of Durango's city manager's office. They can reach out to the attorney general's office. Complaints can be made anonymously and are reviewed with full transparency. What does the chief want the community to take away from this event? We want to stand together with the community, not above it. We want to support peaceful protest. We want to condemn violence. We want to remain guided by our mission to protect, serve, and care for every person in our city. And we are proud of the peaceful protest in the past, and we believe that is our true identity here in Durango. I think that's the gist of the questions that I have for now. And I'll take a break and allow the senators to speak. And
Yeah.
then-
Yeah, we'll have we'll start with Marcia, then we'll have the federal delegation, but then you'll come back for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, councilors, and attendees and staff. My name is Marcia Porter Norton. I am a La Plata County Commissioner, and I want to read a statement. We are here to be part of this conversation And we are here to echo many of the things the chief said about civility and about being together as a community. The La Plata County Board of County Commissioners is deeply concerned about the events that occurred earlier this week outside the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE field office in Durango and the demonstrations that followed. The board recognizes the distress and emotional response this incident has generated throughout our community, and it shares many of those emotions. Although the county had no operational involvement in this incident, we understand that many residents are seeking clarity and reassurance. And by the way, just as a little sidebar, we know this, but anybody who lives in the city is a county resident. The situation involved federal, state, and city jurisdictions, and we are in communication with those partners to remain informed as investigations proceed. The board has urged both state and federal elected officials to urgently review the actions of their employees and to take immediate steps to address instances where they may have acted beyond the law. We appreciate that the Office of Congressman Hurd, U.S. Senator Hickenlooper, and Senator Bennett are actively investigating the situation. Colorado law restricts state and local enforcement's involvement in the enforcement of federal civil immigration law. However, law enforcement may not restrict the actions of ICE either. And that also applies to of course, our sheriff's office, but again, we were not there. The images, videos, and accounts from this week have affected many people in our community. Said me, Marsha Porter Norton, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. We share the community's desire for transparency, accountability, and respectful and legal exercise of residents' First Amendment rights. Federal actions must honor the human, civil, and legal rights of people and the rule of law. The county supports the Colorado Bureau of Investigation's independent review and any additional federal inquiries. We encourage anyone with questions or information relevant to the investigation to work directly with the appropriate investigative agencies. The violent treatment of peaceful protesters makes people feel unsafe, and that is not good for our democracy. This is not how we treat our community, said Commissioner Elizabeth Vilbreck. Just because something is legal does not mean it is moral. Our foremost concern is for the well-being of all who call La Plata County home. As this process continues, La Plata County urges patience, civility, and compassion in community discussions and demonstrations. Moments like this test our shared values, said Commissioner Matsulka. Commissioner Matsulka added, we remain committed to maintaining a safe and inclusive and respectful environment for every resident. For updates, residents are encouraged to follow official communications from the investigating agencies in the city of Durango. I really want to thank you, Mayor, for calling this meeting. I think it is really important in times like this that we gather together face to face, and I really appreciate your time. And councilors, Mayor Pro Tem, thank you.
Marcia. But it was a whole council decision. Okay, so Wyatt and the federal delegation. So yeah. Let's go.
Thank you, council and staff, for joining or holding this special meeting. And I just want to say thank you for the community for being here and showing up for Durango during this heartbreaking moment for our community. I wanted to provide an update on what Senator Bennett has been doing over the past several days and how our office will continue to advocate for the family and the Durango community with our congressional colleagues. As our community continues to grapple with the heartbreaking arrest and detention of the Patino Solano family, as well as ICE's violent response to protesters, I wanted to communicate how Senator Bennett's office has been involved to resolve this issue, in addition to the broader actions that the senator has recently taken to address the Trump administration's cruel immigration policies and enforcement methods. First, our office has been in touch with the family's lawyer, immigrant resources groups, and local leaders since early Monday afternoon. We've been carefully coordinating with Representative Hurd's office and Senator Hickenlooper's office since Tuesday on all of these actions. Earlier this week, our office reached out to the U.S. Customs and Immigration Services and the Houston Asylum Office to confirm that the family's pending asylum case, which ICE has erroneously refuted. We've also reached out to the ICE office in DC, asking for information as to what transpired during the detainment, why the family was picked up on their Monday morning drive to school, given the pending asylum case and no prior criminal record, and whether the appropriate protocols for minors were taken. Furthermore, when we learned on Tuesday that the family was being moved to Texas, we started a line of communication with the Texas delegation for any assistance or oversight they may be able to provide as the family remains in the South Texas Family Residential Center in Dilley, Texas. But most importantly, we are continuing to work closely with our colleagues in the congressional delegation, the family's lawyer, federal agencies, CERC, compañeros, and local leaders to resolve this situation and reunite the family. It is crucial that our congressional offices continue to collaborate closely in a bipartisan manner to obtain responses from USCIS and ICE. The best path to resolve this is through coordination from the federal level and with community partners. Unfortunately, as we are all aware, ICE's actions are not only impacting Durango, but communities across the country. This inhumane and heart-wrenching incident is a continuation of the first Trump administration's cruel immigration policies that separate families and traumatize minors. Senator Bennett shares your outrage to see that here in Durango and across Colorado, and firmly believes that the Trump administration must reverse course on their punitive immigration policies. In February, Senator Bennett and Senator Hickenlooper joined 19 of their colleagues to introduce the Protecting Sensitive Locations Act. This legislation would reinstate the Department of Homeland Security's long-standing policies to prevent ICE from making arrests at sensitive locations like schools, hospitals, and places of worship. In January, the Trump administration rescinded the existing policies, and Senator Bennett believes that every Coloradan should feel safe attending school, church, and the doctor without fear of arrest. In April, Senator Bennett and Senator Hickenlooper led 65 of their congressional colleagues in urging U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi to address the termination of immigration judges. Earlier this year, the Executive Office for Immigration Review, or EOIR, abruptly terminated 20 immigration judges, removed all 9 Board of Immigration Appeals judges appointed during the Biden administration, and terminated 4 individuals in senior EOIR leadership positions. Senator Bennett sounded the alarm that these terminations will and have caused further strain and backlog for our immigration system. In July, Senator Bennett joined Senator Hickenlooper and 23 of his Senate colleagues to press Attorney General Pam Bondi, Department of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, and ICE Acting Director Todd Lyons on the Trump administration's efforts to arrest non-criminal immigrants at their immigration court hearings and deport them without adequate due process. The senators condemned the Trump administration's efforts to undermine due process and intimidate and discourage people from attending their immigration court hearings. And finally, in August, I'm almost through the policy, I promise. Senator Bennett and Senator Hickenlooper joined colleagues in introducing the Immigration Enforcement Identification Safety Act to increase transparency, accountability, and safety in immigration law enforcement. The Center believes that we must hold all law enforcement to the same standard of accountability, and this legislation protects due process rights, prioritizes safe community encounters, and upholds proper immigration enforcement. This has been a devastating week for Durango, but I personally, our office, the Center, we've all been inspired by how everyone has stood up for what they believe in and advocate on behalf of the community. I want to thank you, everyone, for continuing to share your thoughts with our office, and we remain committed to working closely with our fellow congressional offices to resolve this situation and reunite the family. Senator Bennett cannot make the Trump administration stop these cruel and unjust actions on his own. He continues to use his voice to share his outrage about the cruel immigration policies you have experienced this week and the horror of the violence against protesters. And he will continue to work with his colleagues in Congress to ensure accountability for the inhumane actions of this administration. We will all need to come together to ensure that ICE activity like we saw in Durango this week doesn't happen again. Senator Bennett called Mayor Yazzie and Commissioner Porter Norton early today, and of course called Chief Current, as we heard yesterday, to start this conversation about how we can continue to work together. And our office is available at any time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, councilors. My name is Amy Huff, and I am the Southwest Regional Director for Congressman Hurd, who represents the 3rd Congressional District. Okay, I'm sorry. My name is Amy Huff. I've been in this community for a very long time. I recently accepted a position with Congressman Hurd, and I work as a Southwest Regional Director, and he is the U.S. representative for Colorado's 3rd Congressional District. Okay. Our office was contacted on Monday about this incident. We promptly took action and filed a case and we are actively working that case through the systems and the proper channels. At this time, unfortunately, the information for the public is very limited. Although we are all distraught about what's happening, we are proceeding as fast as we can to get answers to these serious problems that we have. And all I can tell you is that our office is in communication with Hickenlooper's office as well as Senator Bennett's office, and we are coordinating and collaborating and doing the best that we can to help this family and get them back to Durango. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, please. Please hold your temper. Okay, let's get started.
Get started? Okay. Thank you, Durango City Council, for convening this meeting. Thank you to the Durango community for showing up in large force. So I'm Lisa Poole. I'm Senator Hickenlooper's Southwest Regional Director, and I'm also based right here in Durango. I'm here to provide an update from our office on this rapidly unfolding situation, and it's a very sensitive topic as well. This is an incredibly painful and terrifying time for our Durango community. Americans have a right to peacefully protest. It's a cornerstone of our democracy. ICE's inhumane treatment and brutal actions need to stop. This incident, excuse me, this incident also demonstrates another overreach from an agency pulling community members off the streets or out of schools with no due process. Senator Hickenlooper said this and has posted this across our platforms. Senator Hickenlooper and our whole team are paying very close attention to this unfolding situation. Our office is, as you have already heard, working closely with the family and their legal team to demand information from ICE on their behalf. We are in close coordination with the other two congressional offices. In general, we are deeply concerned about reports of ICE agents taking families out of communities across the state without identifying themselves and with little regard to public safety. Earlier this year, Senator Hickenlooper teamed up with Senate colleagues to introduce the Immigration Enforcement Identification Act. So this bill would prohibit law enforcement officers from obscuring their faces, and it requires that they clearly display their agency and name. So promoting trust, transparency, and enforcing basic due process rights is essential. The current system is incredibly flawed. For months, Senator Hickenlooper and our team have been in touch with many families desperately searching for loved ones arrested by ICE. During Senator Hickenlooper's oversight visit to the ICE facility in Aurora in August, ICE informed him and our team that they would do their best to respond to our questions, but have been so slow or simply non-responsive. It is clear that their current protocols are unacceptable. The senator also joined the entire Democratic caucus in sending a letter to President Trump demanding the removal of the National Guard from immigration enforcement actions in LA. He is co-sponsoring, as you already heard, the Protecting Sensitive Locations Act to prevent immigration arrests from happening at schools, hospitals, and places of worship. He sent a letter to the Department of Justice condemning the termination of numerous immigration judges, and that's just a sampling of actions. So Senator Hickenlooper is vocal on immigration at the national level and will continue to do so in any way possible. Senator Hickenlooper and our office will continue to demand answers to protect our constituents and their families. Every government agency needs to operate with transparency, accountability, and oversight. ICE is no exception. To everyone here, please reach out to me as your local liaison. Lots of people in this room have my contact information, so you can just ask for it from anyone. And please, so I'm your local liaison to Senator Hickenlooper. Please reach out, and please know that we are working closely with the family and their attorney on their case. So thanks again for convening this meeting.
Thank you. All righty, so those were the presentations. So Bryce, do you think you can come back up and answer a few questions? And then after Bryce is done, we will open up the public comment for a period of 60 minutes.
Well, Mayor,
Go ahead. Okay, so you heard Bryce's presentation earlier. Now, if you have any questions.
Mayor, I've got a couple of questions, if you don't mind. Bryce, thank you. What a impossible situation to find ourselves in. So what was the reason that ICE gave as a refusal to return the minors back to their legal guardian?
they gave several reasons, and some of it was blame. And, you know, I don't completely know what was accurate, but I did get several reasons. But one of the reasons I got towards the end that it was too late.
Okay. And maybe you're not the right person.
Another reason was it needed to be a blood relative. I mean, there were lots of reasons that they gave at different times because I asked multiple times.
Right. So thank you. Do we have any sort of contract with HSI for them to have any sort of working relationship within the city? Does anybody have the answer to that?
Okay, we do work at times with HSI on child sex cases and drug cases and things of that nature, but we don't work. Sometimes they revert back over and work with ICE, and we do not work with them in any way, shape, or form.
But do they have like any sort of contract with the city other than just existing in a facility out in Bodo?
Not that I know of. I know they pay for some of our IT tools with child sex trafficking.
Okay.
And some of the internet crimes against children, and some of the training for officers to go to school for the internet crimes against children and the.
Great. That's all I have for now, Mayor. Thank you.
Jessica?
Yeah, thank you for your statement. And thank you for your work over the last few days. In light of our desire to, and as you mentioned, formally reduce our entanglement with federal civil immigration enforcement, would there be a reason or the ability for us to formalize a policy saying like declining all non-mandated operational assistance, including traffic control, crowd management, logistical aid to ICE during non-criminal enforcement actions within city limits? Would that be helpful and work toward? You said we don't work with them, correct?
On anything immigration related.
On anything immigration related.
Right.
Would you find it benefit to just affirm the city's policy with that, with an additional affirmation?
I would. One of the things, and I would want to work with the city attorney, obviously, on that, and get some information from the AG, but we would wait for council direction on that, obviously. Yeah. And that's one reason why we are a home rule city, is because we can have certain protections within the city, and why I'm glad that we protect that home rule. However, we did run into an incident this last couple of months where on Main Street, an officer rolled up on a situation that looked dangerous, and he wanted to get vehicles out of there. And that's what I would expect, is to get vehicles away, because I can't control, there was a, and I'm not going to say who, but there was a police official that was talking to us this week that said that different agencies have different levels of escalation and de-escalation. I feel like Durango PD, we have a very high level of de-escalation. That's why we made a lot of the decisions we made at the beginning, the middle, and the end. In any situation that police are in, use of force type situations especially, they like to lump them in as one big major event when it's not. You look at it at every aspect of that event. And I definitely wouldn't want to tie the officers down to create and enable safety if they saw federal officers doing something that was unsafe in our community and they wanted to direct traffic and get them out of there or something of that nature. So those are things that we'd need to think about if we're.
Sure. And I'll just mention a lot of these things I was intending to come out of the task force that council has approved. Obviously, this situation has made it where potentially, hopefully, that task force gets started a little bit quicker and we get those recommendations a little faster. But it's good for us to hear from you, the chief of police, if you think it would be helpful to affirm that boundary. And yes, I understand what happened a month ago with the police officer coming up, but anyone watching that video could see that wasn't his intention. You mentioned the de-escalation. Obviously, watching the videos that I watched on social channels, the event on Monday afternoon, evening was very different from the event on Tuesday, and anyone can see that. And so your response on Monday should have been different than your response on Tuesday. And I completely, I understand that. You mentioned your policy with de-escalation. I think I accept the operational assessment that the protesters' actions, your account that chaining the fences is against the law, right? I'm accepting it constituted an illegal interference with a federal facility. However, the subsequent use of pepper spray and rubber bullets at close range against unharmed citizens appears to be unacceptably disproportionate to me.
Please. I'm giving you a lot of leeway right here, so I would like to hear what Jessica has to say.
I'm wondering, you talked about reviewing the footage and asking people to bring footage to you, and you discussed that. And a lot of these questions I'm asking are more for just clarification to ensure. Can DPD and you, Chief, commit to conducting a neutral internal review of all the available footage and officer accounts of the federal agents' use of force and share those findings with the independent state or federal investigators? I think this is vital for upholding public trust.
So that's a very complicated request for this police department. I think that the intent of the police department is to provide all the information that they have, but to ask them to come to a conclusion about those very specific interactions between federal agents and citizens, it would be an overreach for the department.
And I'm not necessarily saying for you to provide your opinion to them. It was more your available footage and your assist. Like you said that you wanted all footage to come to you if there was a abuse or excessive force, correct? Yes. And then you are turning that over to the investigators doing the neutral report and investigation, correct?
We have a couple of different investigations that are occurring. One, the entire incident, and I would think that and from the information I received, and I can't speak for the FBI, but they, like internally, if we have any use of force, we investigate it internally, and it goes through a chain of command throughout our entire department and things of that nature. And the FBI
and a citizen review panel,
yes,
correct?
Yes.
So you get one little complaint, you not only internally review it, but a whole citizen review panel comes and reviews it. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we have something similar with our use of force and a lot of other things, and internal complaints and citizen complaints and everything. We have all these reviews. And from my conversation, and I'm not going to speak for the FBI, my conversation with the FBI, they have a similar process, and they called me immediately and are inquiring. And so, yes, I'll gather that information. But I want to be clear, there are two different investigations. And so the one that where we asked for an official investigation from CBI and And then we were also contacted by federal partners that will possibly parallel that investigation. Those are different because I do have some authority there, I believe. Now there's some immunity with federal partners, and we'll have to speak to the AGs about that and how that relates. However, we're working with the district attorney, Sean, now, and we can continue to follow up on that, especially since Colorado Bureau of Investigation decided to take the investigation. The DA's office will be highly involved. And then if there's something that we feel is not being looked at, then we can look at it ourselves. Matter of fact, we were wanting to look at it ourselves until we received positive information from Colorado Bureau of Investigation to look at that event. In that event, we looked at it I really looked at it when I saw it. I've investigated use of force for 20 years in 3 different sections, and a lot of questions of why. Why did this occur? Why did this occur? And that's, I think, what we'll see from this investigation.
Okay. So Shirley, you're up next.
I think I'll just want to start by acknowledging all the people that were there that day, who really, I mean, I just can't believe more people were not seriously injured in that incident, and people really put their lives on the line for the children and for this community. And it was an incredible display of people's position on this issue, and makes me very proud and sad at the same time. But a few questions, Chief. How many uniformed officers are on patrol at any given time, or how many were on the clock that day?
We generally have 4 or 5 officers patrol.
Because there were at least 13 ICE agents, maybe more, which then again, I think speaks to the level of force. If there had been an incident in Durango that required more support, how might you get that? I mean, would you call the sheriff's office? Would you call the surrounding? If you as a chief felt like things were going to get out of control, what would be your protocol?
At that moment, it was State Patrol. They had several individuals ready, and the jet was on the tarmac. And the local state officials as well. I've been involved in multiple critical incidents in my career, from school shootings to major homicides to gang-related shootings, and we can get every agency in the area somewhere quick. But the decisions I make are we going to escalate the situation, or are we going to de-escalate the situation? And my conversations with the ICE supervisor were not pleasant, as she was trying to commandeer me and direct me to help them. And I get it from both sides. And my decision-making process relies solely on public safety. And if I feel like going out and intervening in something is going to escalate the situation, then we're going to make a different decision. Yeah, I could get agencies to come from all over the place if I wanted.
And so that, I guess, implies that the ICE agents also had time to assemble a team to come in. I guess where I'm trying to understand is, I guess, in your view, you did not think it would escalate to the level that it did, or because I have to admit, I was really shocked at the level of violence that those officers used against our unarmed, peaceful protesters. So why did you not feel that it would escalate to the level that it did?
So I'm going to have to caution you not to answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
No,
I'll,
and the issue is there will be litigation, and to have him speculate as to why he did or he didn't do, it's not the proper forum to speculate.
okay.
So I'm
thank
just going to caution. You can do what you choose to, but my advice is that's not a question that you would answer in this forum.
I'll ask a different question.
I'm going to answer a portion of it. It's not my job to assume. It's my job to plan. And we had plans in place. And the plans revolved around safety of individuals there and not to escalate the situation.
I guess because it went from feeling safe to not feeling safe very fast. So I think that's where I, you know, in the future, I know that I think this will not be the last time. I suspect next time there'll be a lot more people that are present. And I'm concerned that we need to be prepared accordingly, because I didn't see it coming, that level of violence. And I wonder if perhaps we didn't, perhaps others didn't.
Chief, I'm always concerned about Monday morning quarterbacking and folks not being in the moment, criticizing the actions of the folks who are trying to deal with the situation. I don't like dealing in hypotheticals. I think the target here is ICE. These are the agents that did the wrong things and put everybody in a risky situation. If you had intervened, if what this crowd was asking for was intervention, I'm not sure that you didn't de-escalate it very well and keep it from turning into a really violent situation. So I want to make sure that you understand that that's, you know, part of the perspective and part of the conversation that I think we need to be having here. This could have gotten a lot worse as well. And so it's important to understand what we did to prevent something from getting worse. In regards to intervention, I'm not sure what you were going to do. I'm not sure if we're talking about officers tackling ICE agents and what the ramifications and cascade event would have been from that point. But I think the crowd needs to understand that they can want the frustration. They can be frustrated by the actions of ICE, and yet not need to take it out on the local PD that was doing the best it could to try and control, you know, a bad situation. So, is there anything intervention-wise that you had a choice to make that wouldn't have escalated this? Did you feel like you could have done something differently at this point, or you were doing the best with the situation you had, and the confrontational nature that was the ICE agents and the ICE supervisor in this situation determined an awful lot of what you could or couldn't do?
Yeah, and so does the crowd.
Yeah.
You know, even, you know, there's some conversation from the state, you know, talking about going in there and clearing the area, but clearing the area is helping in the transport.
Right.
And so there's a lot of no-win situations here, and you got to do what's best for the community and best for the city at the same time. I mean, even we wanted to go out and give aid, even though they were irritants, and a lot of the calls were specifically for those irritants. You know, not, and that's a lot of pain.
Yeah.
It may not be a significant injury, but it's a lot of pain. But we have to make those decisions when we were going to team up with medics to go and see about the people with the irritants and then get converged on by 10 or 12 people. And after you just witness what happens, some of those people might end up going to jail. You might end up wrestling people down at that point, and that's going to make things worse. And you can see that immediately, and you got to make those decisions split second, and things, you know, tempered down really quickly. And you got to make those decisions if you go out there and start doing that, even medical attention. And at that point, I don't think fire medics, they don't respond to those types of things without police presence to make sure it's safe. They don't have the tools necessary to deal with anything. And even some of the fire folks that stepped outside were being converged on and had to go back inside.
I think there's a point to be made that 100 protesters were there and they chose often not to escalate things. I think officers were also there choosing to not escalate things as well. So,
and I think there's two different standards by the federal officers and city when it comes to passive resistance and active resistance, and when you're going to use irritants and those type things and when you're not.
I want to agree with Councilor Koso, and I want to say, again, I think that the Durango PD was put in an impossible situation. You were no one's friend that day, not on either side. And I agree that we are frustrated with this administration. We are frustrated with who is running Homeland Security right now. We are frustrated with the ICE agents that took those 2 kids and their father. We cannot take it out on people that are doing their best to try to de-escalate situations. And so I didn't say that right out of the gate. I was asking questions, but I completely agree. And I thank you for trying to do your best in what is right in an impossible situation. One of the concerns I have is for the children's welfare, and that you were denied a welfare check on 2 of our children from our community. And I don't know if we can change policy or change, you obviously can't break down doors and fight ICE agents to go check on children. And I'm not saying the county could have done anything. They have a Department of Human Services. Is there other protocols we can put in place to ensure the children that legally should not have been taken, that are our community members, we can check on no matter what? If they were in my home and I said, no, you can't come in, you'd break down the door. Quite obviously, it's a different situation, but I'm at a loss, Chief. What can we do?
No, you're absolutely right. And, it's interesting. And when the city manager was in the room, thank goodness I have a team. That's what he said first. He said, go and check on those kids first, because we're trying to brief on everything else that's going on. And he says, that's the first priority. And we all agreed. And I've never faced that situation where I couldn't go in somewhere and check on somebody for a welfare check. And it was an actual call that came into dispatch. Regardless of how it came in, we have the call. And, we tried to soften the approach with the food as well, because it was a difficult situation. We even went and talked to a lot of the protesters and told them what we were going to do. And they were, they're completely in agreement with everything. And there was a spot that we could get into as well that wasn't locked. And what I look at as the chief is, what do we do moving forward? Because I've never been faced with that before, but now that I have been, who do I talk to? How do I ensure that I'm never denied access into a federal facility again in my city, our city, to be able to check on these kids? And those are the things that we need to look into. I also want to look into what started all this in the first place and why we keep digging the hole. And I don't know what it was, and I'm not going to jump to conclusions if it was ego or what caused this, but can we put something in place where it doesn't have to be the blood relative? If we have CPS, the chief of police, we have somebody from the school. If you have those 3 people, we can make sure the kid's going to get to the parent, right? Child Protective Services takes kids all the time. So those are things that we want to talk about with the federal government and seek this redress. But I would also say, even in Senator Bennett's letter, he's saying he can't control these things. I can't overrule federal actions either, but there's things we can do. And a lot of these things, like the identification, legislature that they're looking at and things like that, that's the redress we need to be seeking as a community.
It's just sad that almost 11 months into this administration, we're still waiting for this legislation to pass, for unmasked officers, for showing themselves, it's like, what is it going to take? I know, that's why I feel at a loss. I can't do anything. You can't do anything. Senator Bennett can't do anything. Who can do something?
I think that's where we focus our attention, is towards those bills and with the legislatures. They're here today.
Yeah. I think that new protocol for detained minors, like you said, how does this not happen again? That's super important that we learn and we figure that out, and getting better. And again, these are all things that I hope the task force would do. And so now we're all just doing them behind the ball.
Or maybe we could create that process where they can release the child.
Thank you. I think this question really is for Mark. Recently, I think there was a Supreme Court case saying that it is legal to racially profile.
Legal to what?
That's legal to racially profile.
Well,
Do you have any updates on that?
it's been illegal for a long time to racially profile.
When you say a long time, I thought that that was something that recently changed.
No, racial profiling has been prohibited by a Supreme Court case that I think goes all the way back to the 70s.
Yes, but recently, was that overturned?
I'm not aware if it has.
And so I guess I'm pretty sure it has. And I guess because I think about, the family that was going to school, it seems that we have sufficient information. I mean, I know it's been in the public now, but even at that moment, that family was legally in the country. They were in fact seeking legal asylum, and they had documentation that proved it. And so why, and I suspect, obviously, I don't know, I was not there when they were initially detained, but I suspect they had documents on them that showed that they were. Only because I worked at Compañeros, we worked in protocols with people to remind them to keep their documents on them. And so I guess I don't know that you can answer it, but why is that not taken into consideration, that they in fact likely had documentation on them?
Yeah, I can't speak for ICE. I have no idea.
I know, but I just think that that's important information. I know that probably most people have seen it by now, but there is a database, and I'm pretty sure it's open to the public where people can check where, what their status is. And so I guess as we continue to suffer, because I think this won't be the last time, that we are prepared as a community for how we will respond as community members, also us here on the dais as well, because I think that we need a better process.
Yeah, and we don't collaborate with ICE. And when the first phone call I'm getting is from a community member, the last thing I'm going to know is what they're asking for on their traffic stop. I haven't even met them in person.
Councilor Gonzalez, it does look like the Supreme Court case did change the rules for racial profiling in immigration cases, not necessarily other criminal cases.
Sorry.
You're right. There's a recent Supreme Court case ruling specific to immigration, racial profiling that allows it.
Is allowed.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question? Sorry, actually, to you. Regarding the issue of mass federal agents, what is your opinion? I know I'm putting you on the spot, so if you tell me you want to answer me later, that's fine too. On the feasibility of us passing like a local ordinance saying that law enforcement operating in public facing capacity in Durango city limits, they have to clearly display their identification and agency information.
So that same principle has been passed in California, and the federal government immediately sued California and took it up with the courts. So you can do it, and it'll be immediately tested.
And they won't do anything about it.
Well, yeah.
So we'll just wait for the senators to hopefully pass some
Correct. To get
real
to the
laws
point
that
where
maybe have some traction. Great.
I mean,
Thank you. I figured, I just wanted to.
I wonder if that's something that we can maybe pass a resolution in support of this going to at the state level,
like to support their
exactly,
effort.
we as
Got it,
as a council body support that ICE, can't wear a mask. They have to wear appropriately labeled vests with their information. And maybe that's an avenue if our state or even federal officials are getting enough resolutions from their municipal constituents, then there's a chance to maybe move the needle.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry.
They're fine.
All righty. So does anybody else have on the dais questions for Bryce? If there's no more questions, I would like to thank you very much for showing very good leadership and, handling the situation that was untenable with limited people getting injured. I really appreciate that. And I like the fact that you tried to go look after the children, because that's our major concern, to the safety of the children. So thank you, Bryce. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor, and to the community that showed up. Thank you.
Alrighty. Okay, so right now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and find out from the clerk how many we have signed up for public comment. Then we're going to divide out the time if it goes over 20. So if it's less than 3 minutes.
Would you like the public comment announcement first?
Yes.
Public comment is encouraged on agenda items set for consideration and a vote by the council tonight. Public comments on items not set for consideration by the council come later in the meeting. Please begin your comments by stating the agenda items set for a vote you intend to speak on, your full name, and if you are a resident of the city of Durango. Make your comments directly to the council. Do not expect a response from the council or staff. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, unless modified by the council. Unused time is not transferable to other speakers. Comments must be specific to the item you identified when you began your comments. Profanity, hate speech, personally derogatory remarks, speech unrelated to the item you identified, or other speech that is disruptive to the meeting will be ruled out of order by the chair, and any remaining time will be forfeited by the speaker. Exceeding the time limit infringes on the rights of others and is out of order. Only a majority vote of the council can modify time limits. Please note, you must sign up prior to the mayor calling the item on the agenda. Signing up after the item is called will result in your name not being called to speak.
We have 24 people signed up, Mayor.
Excuse me. Does that come out to 2.5 minutes each?
2.5 minutes apiece for 60 minutes. That's
Okay,
correct.
so if we could set the timer to 2.5 minutes to get through our participants. And could you start the process?
Certainly. The first step is McKenna Bard.
Okay, please, if you need a clap, just, go like this. What I would like to do is get through all the people before we run out of 1 hour. And we got the time here because I'm cutting it off at 1 hour.
Am I good to speak? Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming out to make our voices heard in the midst of this terrible crisis. My name is McKenna Bard. I am a 16-year-old student, and 2 days ago, on October 28th, 2025, I witnessed and experienced horrors and atrocities that truly go against everything that our beautiful country and city stand for. Before I give my statement, I want to make it clear how appalled I am that our local law enforcement provided no support. They sat and watched as their citizens were brutalized, and then they left. I called 911 and dispatched 5 times, begging for ambulances and medical assistance. We were told that help was on the way, but it never came. Dozens of untrained citizens and 2 first aid certified high schoolers, including myself, were the only people providing first aid at the site for over 2 hours. The people of Durango feel betrayed, lied to, and disgusted. We and I will never recover from the trauma that we have endured in these past 72 hours, and we condemn every agency and person that assisted in the illegal abduction of Fernando Jaramillo Solano, Kevin Daniel Patino Bustamante, and Yana Michelle Jaramillo Patino. We demand that they are located and brought home immediately. I express my deepest love, gratitude, and admiration to everyone who has and continues to stand up for these children, and encourage you all to remember that despite the horrors we have faced this week, we are and will be on the right side of history, and they will never break us. Thank you all.
Next up is Reese Rose.
Hi, my name is Reese, and I am a resident of Durango. I live just outside of city limits, and I was there on Tuesday when everything went down, and We were gathered peacefully, standing and sitting in nonviolent solidarity with Fernando Jaramillo Solano and his two children, Hannah and Danielle. I've seen a lot of media calling what happened a violent protest, but what I witnessed was not a violent protest. What I witnessed was a gathering of peaceful protesters who were brutally assaulted and whose bodies had no choice but to try to survive by fighting off the abuse. I don't consider a human's innate response to stay alive violent. What was violent, though, was ICE agents dragging someone forcefully across the pavement and pepper spraying them within 2 inches of their eyes repeatedly. I saw their disdain through their small opening in their face coverings and felt so worried that they were going to try to kill this person that I ran in to get them off of her. They shoved me away while I screamed that I was trying to help her. I finally got to her and carried her to a medical support person. Then I heard the screams of someone yelling out in a terrified voice over and over that they couldn't breathe. Their eyes were weeping through the coating of pepper spray and their bodies shaking. I lifted them and carried them too over to the medical support person. When another protester and I were bringing them to rest in the grass, they were shot squarely in the back by a pepper bullet. And I can't describe to you what it was like to hear them yell out in pain while their body was contorting. A wounded person being shot again for what? I watched ICE grab someone by the hair and hold pepper spray to their eyes. I saw a Homeland Security car speed up while 2 people were nearly run over in front of it. I watched DPD officers ticketing cars and even spoke with them before the assault occurred and then never saw them again. I watched state troopers stand by and do nothing as we were assaulted. They stepped in only to protect ICE vehicles as they drove away, clearly violating Colorado state law that prohibits local and state law enforcement from collaborating with ICE. DPD and state troopers allowed this to happen while doing nothing to protect the people of Durango who were showing up to protest and prevent a completely unlawful and inhumane family separation.
Next up is Jay Conlon. Jay Conlon.
Hello, my name is Jay Conlon. You have seen me up here before, and I stood in front of the gates for 22 hours. I am here to speak for Remy Majeski, and these are their words. On Tuesday, October 28th, I, along with my fellow Durango community members, were violently assaulted by federal agents while local Durango police officers and Colorado State Patrol troopers watched on the sidelines. Some of these agents even participated in the brutality. After peacefully protesting for nearly 24 hours against the injustice committed against this family, federal agents from Homeland Security, without warning, sprayed me directly in the face with pepper spray multiple times, at least 3 from what I can recall. I was also sprayed all over my body, causing my clothes to soak through with pepper spray until my skin burned from my head to my toe. While sitting on the pavement, an officer from an unknown agency yelled at me and others around me that we would be tased, a known fire hazard when combined with pepper spray. Gasping for breath, trying to tell them I couldn't breathe, I was pulled to safety by a friend. However, while actively fleeing the situation, I was shot in the back with a rubber bullet that nearly collapsed me to the ground into an even more vulnerable state. If this were an active war zone, shooting a defenseless civilian in the back while actively fleeing would be considered a war crime. While I was dealt these unimaginably horrible blows, others around me still received much worse. I am severely disappointed in the complicity of the Colorado State Patrol and the Durango Police Department. How can you protect and serve while actively participating in the same violence you claim to defend your citizens against? You know who cared for me after I was violently assaulted. My fellow community members, my coworkers, my friends, and strangers who I've never met before. Not the public servants who claim to care for our community. I've always been ambivalent about law enforcement agencies, and this has only solidified that none of these officers can ever be trusted. Shame on all of you.
Okay, council, let's take a little break. If we would proceed to our break room, please.
Next up is Natalia Anzola.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing our stories. My name is Natalia Anzola. I'm a member of this community. I've served as a wildland firefighter. I'm currently a student at the fort, and I'm bringing you the words of my friend Molly. Hello, my name is Molly, and I unfortunately could not be here today. If I was here, you may have recognized me as the person who attended this peaceful sit-in style of protest, who is praising our first responders and defending their actions. As I have long been a supporter of local law enforcement, I have worked alongside our first responders. I have trusted our first responders. Many of them I have considered dear friends. Following the events of Monday, when our peaceful demonstrators were brutalized by Homeland Security, ICE, and the Colorado State Patrol, I have never in my life been more disappointed in the first responders of this community. As I sat on the phone with 911 holding screaming children, including an infant whom I did not know, and begging for EMS for 40 minutes, I noticed our city's first responders standing in the parking lot next to us. When I turned to them and began begging for help, 20 minutes after the violent ICE, CSP, and Homeland Security left, the entire police department turned their backs, walked away, and shut themselves in the building like cowards. I watched 20+ people in need of urgent medical care, some bleeding from their head, some foaming from their mouths and convulsing on the ground, some unable to breathe, and no emergency medical services ever arrived. There were severely injured children in this crowd who cried out for help to our EMS. Luckily, the citizens of this community were there to do what our first responders should have done, and our first responders abandoned us when we so desperately needed them. They could not have done a better job of creating mistrust and doubt in their abilities. As individuals and departments, had they tried, we now know.
Time's up.
Thank you for hearing my comments.
Next up is Tirza Camacho. Tirza Camacho, and she is online. Tom.
Hey, do you know what she's, is it going under Tirza? We're having a hard time finding her.
We'll come back to her. The next up is Reverend Jamie Boyce.
Dear City Council, thank you for your time tonight. My name is Reverend Jamie Boyce. I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister and resident of Durango. I wanted to speak to you tonight for two reasons. The first, to share my personal experience at the protest on Tuesday, and second, to draw attention to the moral crisis taking root in our beautiful city. On Tuesday morning, I responded to the call of support from Compañeros to attend a peaceful protest at the ICE facility. When I arrived, I was immediately struck by the warmth, generosity, and kindness of those gathered. I soon joined those who sat arm in arm in front of the gate where we chanted, "Free our neighbors." It wasn't long before ICE arrived in full military gear.
The ICE agents approached us and proceeded to stomp on protesters, breaking our bonds, pulling us apart while we're releasing pepper spray directly into the faces of individuals. They released sound cannons to scare and agitate. They fired rubber bullets. At one point, I saw an ICE agent chokehold a protester. The excessive and brutal and cruel use of force by ICE and the complicity of local law enforcement as people screamed, "Why won't you protect us?" speaks to the moral crisis at hand, which is this: the normalization and celebration of cruelty and brutality to suppress, terrorize, imprison, and break our communities, abducting people without due process, breaking families apart, militarizing our cities, and using excessive force to suppress our right to assemble and right to speak. It is destroying what is good and what is commonly good among us. City Council, I want you to hear the haunting cries of people screaming, "Why won't you protect us?" Because that is the question that calls for your moral clarity. I beg you, claim your moral ground and strength of character to help heal our hurting city, to protect immigrant neighbors and community members, and to resist the terror and brutality gripping our city and our nation. We need you now.
Please, please keep the celebration down. This is not an NFL stadium, okay? We must show some courtesy to people. I mean, that's part of why we live here in Durango, that we are respectful of each other and we're not hooting and hollering like we have no manners. Please, let's get through this together.
Next up is Charlotte Dieters.
Is it possible to clear the hall?
Thank you, Council, for providing this forum. It's really appreciated. And I just want to give a shout out to Durango for being so supportive of this family. It's truly inspiring. I'm a resident of Durango. I was a participant at the protest on Tuesday. I was there while the family was removed from the facility, and I can only echo what others have said about the brutality of ICE. It was truly, absolutely shocking. I'm 79 years old. I've been involved in protests since the Vietnam War, and I have never seen brutality like was displayed on Tuesday. And while I appreciate Chief Current's efforts to keep the children in Durango, I will have to say that I found the DPD response, I found that it, from my perspective, it only escalated the situation. It did not de-escalate. And I could see that other protesters, in seeing DPD's presence there, while apparently, legally there's no collaboration, but it appeared, the appearance was of collaboration and cooperation with ICE, and it absolutely escalated the situation, in my opinion. Thank you to the senator's staff for coming to this family's aid, and thank you all for being supportive and for being good people. It's this de-escalation or devolvement into fascism is truly, truly chilling. Thank you.
Next up is Olivia DePablo.
Thank you very much. My name is Olivia de Pabla. Thank you for having me, for allowing me to speak. I think everybody knows what happened on Monday, October 27, and the desperate calls for help to avoid detention of one father and 2 children. And I don't know if everybody happens to know what happened once they were detained and chained and treated like criminals and forced to utilize one single restroom in front of the little girl. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous and I'm upset, so I'm going to try to compose myself. I'm here to ask you, why were they treated like animals and what was their crime? What did they do to deserve this? Like any other loving parents, they come here seeking safety and stability for their children, the very values we saw and precious and appreciate in our community. As an immigrant myself, I am heartbroken. But I'm also inspired by the compassion I saw from our community that day, the people that were protesting and resisting. Still, compassion alone is not enough. We need action. I'm asking the city of Durango to do everything in your power to protect immigrant families and ensure that what happened that day never happens again. Specifically, I urge you to use all available municipal resources, including the Durango Police Department, to safeguard immigrant families and the community as a whole. I also ask you to emulate other cities' initiatives, such as Chicago, Los Angeles, Las Cruces, that have implemented local policies. Right now, immigrants in Durango are terrified. And that word doesn't even capture the depth of our fear. We cry, we lose sleep, and we live every day wondering who will be next? Who will be next? We are breaking, preserving, and traumatized all at once, yet we are still here. I refuse to be a scapegoat or be the undesirable. I'm counting on you, our city leaders, to stand with us, to protect us and keep Durango a place of safety. And lastly, I just want to tell you, we are dealing with a monster that wants to divide us. If we're not remain united, we're not going to stand a chance. Thank you.
Next up is Madeline Marquardt. Madeline Marquardt.
I'm Madeline Marquardt, and I'm a resident of the County of La Plata. And I want to thank the City Council and the Police Chief Current for holding this meeting today and providing the community with facts surrounding the tragic events of the past several days. I, like so many others in this county, read the Herald article and felt anger, despair, urgency, fear, and finally the motivation to stand before you today to express my views. What happened on Monday and Tuesday felt like a blow I could not ignore. The idea that our federal government, the Trump administration, ICE, can round up children and parents in our community without consequences, without explanation, and without accountability is intolerable. To say that ICE is only rounding up drug dealers, gang members, and those with criminal records in Durango is a joke, a ludicrous lie that we should not abide by. Is it that Trump and therefore ICE have set a body count, a human body quota, in order to fill detention centers that the administration has established, and thereby somehow justifying $45 billion that has been budgeted in 2025 for detention capacity? Do ICE employees have a body count incentive to capture brown-skinned members of our community so that they meet a quota? Perhaps get a holiday bonus? We must stand up and say no to ICE in Durango, no to ICE in La Plata, and no to ICE in Colorado. Thank you.
Next up is Maya Kane.
Thank you, members of the council, for the opportunity to speak before you. My name is Maya Kane. I've been a Durango resident since 2011. And I'm an attorney and a trained legal observer through the National Lawyers Guild. I was there first as a peaceful protester with my children on Monday afternoon. And then the next day, I spent many hours there observing, looking for civil rights violations, of which there were many, and I do not need to recount. But what I didn't expect to witness was my stepfather, a Vietnam veteran in his 70s, emerging from a cloud of pepper spray he could not see. He had been pushed to the ground, he had been thrown into a vehicle, and subsequently taken out again. He doesn't know who pulled him out because he could not see. He's in his 70s. He served 2 tours in Vietnam in his late teens. He put his life on the line for our country, and he did it again to help a family in distress. I am also here for another reason, because I question the fundamental premise that we are powerless to stop this as a governmental entity. This ICE facility is owned by private individuals. It is within city limits. It is merely leased to a federal agency. Federal jurisdiction, I don't believe, is not automatically conferred, and certainly not for unlawful activities. The police should retain the authority to respond to criminal matters, and local code still applies. DHS and ICE regulations were violated wholesale throughout this whole episode. Children may not be held for more than 24 hours, and when they are, they must be in a licensed facility, a state licensed child care facility, not a jail, not an ICE field office, and not an adult detention site. There was no juvenile ICE coordinator on site, and when it was requested, my colleague, who is also an attorney, was told that that position in Durango does not exist. So clearly, violations were being made across the board. Since this building is being used for an unlawful purpose, I request that the city immediately conduct an investigation into all permitting associated with this building. Land use, building permits, health and safety, fire inspections, all of those things are within your power. I also ask that you produce a statement to counter the patently false statement from ICE, mischaracterizing the entire incident. Transparency, accountability, and oversight are our mandate in this time, and I request that you step up.
Next is Landon Whitley.
Hello, Council. My name is Landon Whitley. I'm a resident of Durango, and I just have a question for you that actually relates to a bunch of what the last speaker was saying. If possible, I would appreciate a response. As we've heard, individuals arrested by ICE had an active asylum application, which should mean they are safe from the kind of treatment we witnessed and protested. This is just one of several egregious violations perpetrated by the federal agents this week. We've heard about the investigations opened by CBI, but the reality is that these are only able to be opened after ICE is finished terrorizing our community. What can and will our public officials do to hold ICE accountable to their own rules in real time to stop events like these before they've been completed? I'll ask a few more questions that I have then. As you know, the recent protest outside the ICE facility ended in a catastrophe with federal agents causing immense physical and emotional harm to our community members. When the escalation occurred, it was instantaneous and without warning, despite several attempts from protesters and legal personnel to communicate with the ICE officers in order to reach a peaceful resolution. This kind of public assault from federal agents is a form of not just violence, but intimidation that sends the message to shut up and get in line while our children seeking asylum are subjected to the same kind of violence they fled. What steps will our local government take to ensure the safety of our demonstrators? What steps can we count on being taken in order to restore the faith that our First Amendment right is being protected and that our voices are being heard? Is there any power at the local level to reject federal actions like the ones that took place Tuesday? It's clear that when those removed from our community became involved, our neighbors' safety and well-being was completely disregarded. Is it possible for our local officials to deny federal assistance in future scenarios in order to avoid similar outcomes? And if so, is that something you plan to do? As we've heard, the individuals arrested by ICE, I've just said that one. I think it goes without saying that many of us believe that the violence inflicted on ourselves, our neighbors, and our constituents this week has no place in our community, to say the least. For myself and many of my friends, we remember 2 Durangos, one before the events of October 28th and another that came after. What place does the City Council see ICE playing in the future of Durango? What actions will our local government take to lessen, prevent, or remove ICE's involvement in our community in alignment with the demonstrations of this past week? Thank you.
Next is Vern Gersh. Vern Gersh is the next name. We'll move on to Sarah Gully. Sorry.
My name is Sarah Gwelly, MD. I've been a Durango Tang for 8 years. I come from immigrants. My great-grandfather left Sicily to flee fascism, for freedom and future for his family. My father served as a Marine and later for the Buffalo Police Department. I am the first member of my family to attend college, and I achieved my dream of becoming a physician. During COVID, I returned to New York and built ICUs at Elmhurst alongside our military. I believe in that America. An America that has dreams and hopes for people. An America where people come for asylum. An America where people feel safe. An America where we can stand side by side and help each other. Not what is going on now. The fear-mongering, the violation of rights, the trampling of our Constitution. Everything that happened this week, I've never been so proud of the community around me. And I've never been so disappointed in our officials who should be leading the way. I could talk about morals, but I question a lot of them. So I'll just stick with the facts. The preparedness was abysmal. You have a police chief who's saying, I never had this happen before. I didn't know who to call. Are you not watching what's happening in the rest of the country? This is happening everywhere. We have a lawyer who doesn't know that what's going on in the Supreme Court. That is abysmal and embarrassing. If I was this bad at my job, I wouldn't have one. Your job is to protect us. You don't even pay attention to what's going on. Shame on you, not for your moral failings, that too, but shame on your inability to carry out your basic job. Shame.
Next up is Rose Missouri.
Can I ask a question? When it starts turning into personal attacks, what options do we have as a council?
Well, my option,
Or we can
My
cancel the meeting if that is more appropriate.
you know, I'm giving
Absolutely
people
not.
a lot of leeway, but we can also call it.
Okay.
I called Rose Missouri.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I've been protesting ICE for nearly 10 years now. I once stood outside of a building in 110-degree heat where children had been unlawfully detained, separated from their families. There was no kitchen in this building, barely any facilities at all. These kids, I'm sorry, this part is hard, but there was a lot of evidence of sexual, physical, and emotional violence that were perpetrated on these kids. I also volunteered in helping with people coming out of Border Patrol custody. And I would see these families who recently reunited with their children or, you know, barely were able to hold on to them. And they would have these bracelets on their ankles and being tracked to get to their host families. I saw once a baby, maybe 6 months old, who had lost several pounds while being detained by Border Patrol and ICE. And I was at the protest the other day. I was there at like 6 a.m. ICE came out. They needed to get food to the families. What they were getting was their own McDonald's order. I saw someone be thrown to the ground over it, and they got a bag of McDonald's and went back in the building. One of the things I keep hearing people say is, how could this happen? I don't really think that that's a useful question. My question is, why is it still happening? Like, why are we letting this happen in our community, right? And let's be realistic. Do we have any power over that? No. So my question, I guess, for our community is, what are we willing to stand for? And what are we willing to do to protect children who, you know, they were walking to school. That's one of the only safe places for children, and they didn't make it. Thank you.
Next is Robin Richard.
I'm going to apologize. I have to leave. I have a prior commitment that I'm late for. I will listen to everyone's comments. I promise. Your comments matter. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
My name is Robin Richard. I'm a citizen of La Plata County. I'm an internal medicine physician. So my specialty is to care for adults with multiple complicated medical problems. I've been serving the Four Corners area for 22 years. I was at the protest on Tuesday. What I saw in the aftermath was caring for people in a lot of distress. I saw people caring for people. I was surprised that EMS was not there. I was concerned, and I am concerned about the level of injury that could have happened. Imagine somebody with asthma going to respiratory failure because they got sprayed in the face with pepper spray. Imagine blunt trauma from rubber bullets. Imagine concussions from people being pushed down to the ground. Imagine heart attacks from people under stress. We already heard some things that happen to our elders. Elders who fall can break hips. I mean, non-lethal means is what they call it, but it's very violent, and it can become lethal depending on your underlying medical conditions. So the dangers are real. And the fact is our government is going to continue to militarize against us and continue to use force. And the fact is that as our legal channels are failing us, we are going to continue to put our bodies in front of the people who are committing these actions against our communities. So my request of law enforcement and EMTs, there's got to be protocols and policies already in place for dealing with mass unrest, or at least trainings on that. I understand they can't go in while rubber bullets and pepper spray are going on, but there's got to be ways to de-escalate. And somebody could have died that day. It's not minor. And so I do think, because this community hasn't faced this kind of violence, and this kind of violence is spreading all over the country, that if DPD, the fire district, our EMS services, and the county emergency response services don't have adequate training, they need it. And at least the city needs to support DBT in doing that if they need more training. Because what happened on Tuesday could have turned into a mass casualty event, and it should have been prepared for as such. So thank you for listening to my comments.
Next is Joni Valacorsa Campo. Joni Valacorsa Campo. There.
Hello, my name is Joni Valacorsa Campo. I am a citizen of Durango. I moved here about a year and a half ago to attend school at the fort. I was present at the protest the other day. It was my very first protest I had ever attended. I am a 20-year-old trying to figure out what is going on in life, and the things I experienced was nothing that I thought I would have to go through. As soon as the agent vehicles had arrived, I heard a lot of people shouting. They said, "They're moving them out, we need to do something," and my body moved without warning. I went over to the south gate, I hooked arms with a couple different people, and we were chanting. We were standing for what we thought was right, and it happened extremely quickly. It started with a couple of men in fully armed gear using an electrical chainsaw to saw the chains off of the gate. And I don't know, I feel like that might have been maybe a scare tactic of some sort, But it very quickly turned into them ripping us apart. They dragged a girl by her leg into the middle of the street and then continued to assault her. And I stayed hooked with one other person. I was blacking out during a lot of it, but the one thing I do remember were the sheer screams of terror. None of us wanted it to turn violent. We wanted our neighbors back. At one point, one of the agents had tried to grab me from under my arms and yank me away from the girl who was holding on to me so tightly. And I remember screaming. I don't even remember what I was screaming, but I was sprayed with pepper spray maybe 4 or 5 separate times. They just kept going after us. And it's like, even once we were on the ground, they kept going. And eventually I was pulled away from the crowd and I was treated by strangers. I didn't know anyone in the area. I was treated by people who were just filled with community. And it was no one who was actually included with the law that helped me that day. Thank you.
Next is Tal Leto.
Hi, counselors. My name is Teal Leto, and I really appreciate you all for being here and listening to your community. I want to start off by reminding DPD that Colorado Revised Statutes 18-1-802 1.5a is a duty to intervene on any officers that are using excessive force, including and riot and crowd control. I have very deep personal ties to Durango. I lived here my entire life. My partner is somebody who has been working in law enforcement for some time. And I just have to say that I categorically reject the statement that Durango Police Department did everything they could. They had a duty to intervene as things turned violent. In fact, Sergeant Patrick Engel told the Durango Herald in an article on Monday that he and other officers would be there to help if either side got violent. I think it is incredibly important for our law enforcement officials to mean what they say so they maintain trust with our community. I have 2 things that I ask of Durango Police Department. 1, that they do a better job intervening if there is violence in their community committed by either citizens or other police officers. 2, most of the protesters that were there were incredibly young. You've heard that from some other people. Most of the protesters that were there were under the age of 25. This is the first time they've ever been at an incident like this. Stuff like this does not happen in Durango very often. I think it's really important for the police department to do a better job of educating protesters of what their rights are and being there to help save them when their rights are being violated. So I ask that the city council requires the Durango Police Department to create some kind of open training for protesters in Durango to learn what their rights are so they know how to protect them. Thank you for your time.
Next is Larisha Lano. Larisha Lano. We'll move to the next person, Rick Cobb. Scott Custer.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for holding this meeting. I think it's very important for all of us. I don't have much of a voice because I was yelling and I was pepper sprayed in the face multiple times. I actually can't even count them. We moved to Durango in 1998. We're living now in Bayfield, but I continue to work serving children and families in Bayfield, and I've done that for years. I just want to clarify a couple things. One is this protest that we had was, it was peaceful. I spent the night with some phenomenal students, and the amount of love and responsibility that I felt among those students was astounding. This was completely peaceful on our part. The other thing I think that's really important to know is we were blocking those gates because when ICE comes in illegally and taking people who are legally authorized to be in this country, Once those kids and those families are taken, all bets are off and they don't have to follow the law, and there is no way that they can get judicial process. Once they're gone into the system that this government, our federal government, has created that we know is completely illegal and based on cruelty and falsification. DHS has a department that they've created to create false narratives to explain what's going on and to create a sense of danger and fear among our citizens against our fellow citizens. We have evidence that they've taken video footage from other incidences and spliced them into this to create this narrative. All you have to do is go on YouTube and look at what they did about what happened in Chicago when they attacked that apartment building, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So I think we need to put this in the context of what's happening right now. We have a government who is lawless, a government who is doing everything they can to get rid of all of our rights as citizens, as communities, and as a country. And we need to put this in that context and make plans for what we're going to do as a result of it. And I'll just say one thing related to that. I'll just read a passage from Thessalonians 2:9. It says, "The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve the lie." We need to pay attention to what's going on and respond accordingly. Thank you.
Mayor, I know you had called a 1-hour time limit. I have 4 additional people that have signed up and 3 that signed up after that we had already called the item.
Excuse me. I've got on my sheet here that we've gone nearly an hour, and that's what we had scheduled for the public hearing. I think that, are you guys good with that?
What was the question, Mayor? Like,
We're up to an hour on the public hearing.
yeah, I think we also took a break that I think we should account for. But if we have what? How many more? We have 5, 6.
4 more that signed up as we called the item, and then 3 that signed up after we had already
I'd say
called
we call the 4. I think that seems reasonable, Mayor. But I'm only one counselor.
Agreed.
All right, let's do the 4.
Next, I just have the initials BA.
Hi, my name is Batia. I live outside of Durango, and I was present for the entire protest. I saw everything. I corroborate everything everyone has said. I don't feel like I need to go into the details myself. I would like to cut through the kind of circular speak about the law, because we know for a fact DPD has collaborated with ICE. We have it on video. We saw it this week. We also know that ICE doesn't care about the law anymore. So trying to parse out those details, I feel like, is disrespectful to the fact that there was a 12-year-old girl held in a building for over 24 hours with 6 men who were so deeply unregulated and angry, and no one was willing to do anything about it because there is a facade of law which they were actively breaking. I care about this because my family was a victim of the Holocaust, and we have literal history to look at to tell us what is about to happen and what we can do differently. And I would like to feel respected and cared for by the place that I live and the people who say that they will protect me and the people that I care about. And if that doesn't happen, all we have is each other. The only people there who was taking care of each other was us. I called an ambulance. They didn't come. They put me on hold. Nobody came for us besides ourselves. And if you are so uncomfortable with our passion and our anger and our grief and our need to do something about this, I think that says a lot more about how you are seeing this event and this time period than anything else. And I would like to be able to clap for my friends because I support them. I would like to be able to show you that we care about this place and our neighbors. And if we can't do that, it makes me feel very afraid.
Next is Kathleen O'Connor.
Hi, thank you, council members, for listening today. I've been a Durango resident since 2010. I was not at the protest on Tuesday. I was there Monday. It was a very different scene, but my heart goes out to all of the community members who came out both days to stand up for these illegalities that were being committed by ICE. And I just would like to underscore, you've heard the stories today, but I would really like to circle back and underscore what some of the speakers have already said that has to do with the protection of the children and the family. And the police department is here, as was stated, to protect the citizens. I don't feel like these kids were being protected. They were detained illegally, and after several requests from the police department to check on them, they were denied. And I'm happy to hear that there's protocols that are going to be going into place for that, but we still have 2 kids that we've lost from our community. And I would like to see city council members work with the different representatives from our federal government offices of Bennett, Hickenlooper, Heard, to get these kids back and to make sure that these kids are protected. All kids in the future going forward, and also these kids that have already been taken. We need to get these kids back into Durango, into our community. And we need to make sure that these kids are protected in these circumstances when ICE is illegally detaining them and holding them. There has to be a pathway for our police department to protect them and our community. So thank you very much.
Next is Autumn Vargas. Autumn Vargas. Okay. Leah Young.
Hello. My name is Leah Young, and I was at the protest on Tuesday, and I want to share what happened. First off, I was there because I'm a human being, and I know what it feels like to have a family. I have a little sister. I remember what she was like when she was 11. I hope that you remember what your child was like when they were 11. I would not want her to go through anything that those kids had to go through. I was in the chain blockade on the South Gate, linked in. When ICE came, we were peaceful. We were totally peaceful. Before that, there was singing and there was music playing, and I had a lot of really nice conversations with a lot of people. It was very, very nice. And then when ICE came, we linked up and they started antagonizing us. They had the chainsaw thing going on with the gate. And then they also ripped off my glasses and pepper sprayed me straight into my eyes. And then the gentleman next to me, he's very kind, gave me his because I communicated that mine were gone. So he was vulnerable. Did it again, even though I was holding on to them. And they pepper sprayed me straight into my eyes a second time and straight down my throat, and they ripped my mask down. And the only thing that I ever said to ICE when they were there, I said, I hope that your kids can see this. I hope you take your mask off and your child sees a video of you doing this to us. And I stand by that. They also pepper sprayed me in my crotch. I'm on my period. I'm 21. That felt disgusting and extremely, extremely dehumanizing. And I felt, damn it, I forgot the word. I'm very nervous. I felt very violated. It was extremely intensely painful for the rest of that day. It's nothing compared to what those kids have to go through, an lifetime of pain after being dragged away from their family. I want to see ICE out of my state. I want to see it out of my community. This is not the world that I was promised. And if Durango Police doesn't come up with a plan for how they will do things differently next time, then this will happen again and again and again. They failed us. No human is illegal on stolen land.
Thank you.
That's the end of the list, Mayor. We do have 4 people that we called previously that did not respond. Do you want to recall those people? We had Vern Gersh, Marisha Lano, Rick Cobb, Autumn Vargas, and Terza Camacho.
And
Terza was online.
I do see her online.
Okay, she's online.
Terza, you should be able to unmute and speak now. If need be, you can use Control-Shift-M to unmute your mic.
Is she on the list here?
Yes, Mayor. I can pull that up for you to see. So you can see that I have unmuted the mic, but the mic is remaining muted from their end. Yeah. Yeah, I can try it again.
Is there any indication that she's there?
They have raised their hand. That's what has ended.
I mean,
That's fine.
yeah, put it up there, put up the speaker, see if it'll work.
Hey, Tirza, you're on speaker now.
Can you put it maybe closer to the microphone or the speaker, like the speaker, the bottom of your phone? Yeah, there you go. Put that bottom towards the mic.
Jesus. Yeah.
Perfect.
Good. Go for it, Tirza. Oh, kind of. Speak loud, girl. You're on speaker here.
Justice organizer in this region for over 25 years. I was at this peaceful protest where I was pepper sprayed and held on the ground by an ICE agent while trying to render aid to young protesters. I wear a lot of hats in this community. This time I'm speaking on behalf of myself. And primarily, my number one identity here is that I'm a parent. If anyone in this community, anyone, had their children stolen, I would have reacted the same. I will fight and risk everything I am and have for children, even when they're not mine. No fake borders or fake labels will change that. I'm a mother, and I stand with mothers everywhere. DPD says that they're trying to trust build in this community. That's not happening. But thanks for the parking ticket. City Council needs a model and how to behave right now. They can look at Brandon Johnson, Mayor of Chicago, and any press conference. Anyone. That's how it's done. I'll close with a couple of things. Don't forget you all are on stolen land and every brown body belongs here. And the people outside in masses, we're not done. People power has been the only thing that has ever changed anything. Come what may, the people of this community are united, and we're here to have the fight of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're adjourned.